On his way home from work, a poor little boy finds a billionaire CEO's wallet and decides to return it without taking a penny, only to wake up the next morning to a knock at his door that changes everything. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching us from, and please like this video to support the channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Finley hated Thursdays. His mom always picked up the evening shift at the diner, which meant he had to walk home alone, past the same rusted-out corner store and the billboard with the peeling ad for toothpaste that no one in their building could afford. His backpack was too heavy on one side. He'd stuffed it with empty soda cans he planned to cash in at the recycling machine tomorrow, pretending it was for an environmental science project, not lunch money. The crosswalk button didn't work, so he waited for a gap in the traffic and sprinted across like he was dodging lasers in a spy movie. He liked imagining things that way. Made the walk home feel less like survival and more like a game. His shoes had holes in both soles, but he'd fixed them with duct tape and confidence. Somewhere between the subway stairs and the overflowing dumpster outside Sal's Pizza, he spotted something strange on the sidewalk. It was a wallet. Not just any wallet, this thing practically glowed. Leather so smooth it looked illegal. Gold trim. Thick with cards and cash. He crouched to pick it up, glanced around like someone might jump out and accuse him of theft. He flipped it open. Cash. More than he'd ever seen in one place. Hundreds, maybe 1,000. A sleek black credit card. 2 business cards tucked behind a license. One read Victor Crane, CEO, Crane Link Technologies. Finley let out a low whistle, then whispered, "Whoa. This guy's not just rich. He's cartoon rich." He sat on the curb, still holding the wallet, legs swinging over the gutter. It would be easy. Take $20, buy groceries, maybe some new socks. Who would notice? But then he looked at the license again. The photo looked stiff, like someone who smiled once in 2003 and didn't care to repeat it. The name stuck with him though, Victor Crane. He'd seen it on billboards and subway ads. Crane Link had something to do with computers, or satellites, or stuff only grown-ups with suits understood. The man probably had 20 of these wallets. Finley turned the black card in his hand like it was a movie prop. Then he sighed, stuffed the wallet in his backpack, and stood up. "Fine. I'll be the good guy today. But your name's Gerald now," he muttered to the wallet. "You and me, Gerald, we've got a delivery to make." The receptionist at Crane Link's glass and steel skyscraper looked like she ate diamonds for breakfast. She barely glanced at Finley before returning to her monitor. He marched straight to the front desk and hoisted himself up on his toes. "Hi. I'm here to see Victor Crane. It's very important. I have a delivery for him." She blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" "Not exactly," he said. "But I've got something he lost. And I figure billionaires hate losing things more than they hate taxes." She paused. Finley unzipped his backpack just enough to show the edge of the wallet. That got her attention. She picked up the phone. "Security?" "Yeah. You might want to come to reception." A few minutes later, 2 guards showed up, all frowns and earpieces. Finley explained calmly that he wasn't stealing anything and didn't want a reward. He just wanted to give it back. Maybe get a snack if they were offering. They escorted him upstairs anyway, past frosted glass doors and intimidating artwork that looked like someone had lost a fight with a paintbrush. Victor Crane's office was massive and quiet. He was standing at the window, not looking out so much as away. When he turned, his expression didn't change much, but his gaze landed on the wallet in Finley's hand. Finley held it out. "You dropped this, Gerald." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Okay, not your real name. I named it Gerald while we bonded on the way here." Victor took the wallet, opened it, checked the contents with a quick efficiency that said he'd done this before. "Everything's still there," Finley said. "I thought about taking a 20 for snacks, but Gerald talked me out of it." Victor didn't smile, but he looked interested. "What's your name?" Finley. I'm 10. I'm not supposed to talk to strangers, but I figured if someone has a building named after them, they're probably too busy to be creepy. Victor studied him like a puzzle. Finley didn't squirm. He never did when adults stared. It just meant they didn't know what to do with a kid like him. He'd gotten used to that. Why didn't you keep it? Victor asked. Because karma's real. Also, my mom would kill me. And I figured if you're rich enough to own a satellite, you probably have some kind of billionaire GPS wallet tracker. You'd find me either way. Victor sat down, rested his elbows on the desk. You live nearby? Finley shook his head. Took the bus. Used my last coins. But it's okay, the driver let me slide because I told him I was on a mission of justice. Victor leaned back slightly. Are you hungry? Starving. But only if it's not weird to ask for food in a billionaire's office. Victor pressed a button on his phone and asked someone to bring up lunch. Finley didn't recognize half the food that arrived, but he tried everything, declared the sushi. Confusing but possibly magic. And ate 3 shrimp dumplings in a row. Victor watched, saying very little. Finley finally asked, mouth full. Do you always eat stuff that smells like ocean and looks like math? That cracked something in Victor. It wasn't quite a laugh, but the corners of his mouth twitched. For a guy who could probably buy an island, he looked kind of tired. Like all the money in the world still couldn't fix something. Finley didn't say that out loud, though. He just wiped his hands on a napkin, thanked him for the food, and stood up. Guess I'll head home. My mom's gonna flip when I tell her I hung out with a tech overlord. Victor hesitated. I'll drive you. Finley blinked. You're gonna drive me home? Like in a car you drive? Yes. Finley grinned. Do you have rocket launchers in it? Victor didn't answer. Just gestured toward the elevator. The car wasn't flashy, sleek, sure, but quiet. The ride took longer than Finley remembered. When they pulled into his street, the buildings seemed to shrink under the weight of their age. Graffiti curled over cracked bricks. A kid was spraying a bottle of something against the wall. Finley waved. Victor parked. This is it? Finley nodded. Top floor. Elevator hasn't worked in 2 years. It's good cardio. Victor didn't say anything. Finley opened the door and shouted, Mom! I brought a billionaire home. There was a clatter from the kitchen, followed by footsteps. Isabel appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel, brows furrowed. She stopped cold when she saw Victor. Finley bounced on his toes. He didn't kidnap me. I found his wallet. Gave it back. He fed me alien sushi. Can we keep him? Victor stepped forward, hand out. Victor Crane. Your son saved me a lot of trouble today. Isabel shook his hand cautiously. Her gaze darted to Finley, then to the expensive car parked outside. She crossed her arms. Did he take anything? No, Victor said. He could have. He didn't. Finley piped up. Told you. Karma's watching. Victor looked around the apartment once more, then back at Isabel. There was something about her, composed, wary, but not apologizing for any of it. He nodded once. You've got a remarkable kid. Finley grinned. Told you I was awesome. And for a moment, none of them knew just how much that little moment, wallet, walk, knock, was about to change everything. The apartment still smelled faintly of the takeout Victor had brought the night before, the empty cartons stacked on the counter like trophies. Isabel had barely slept. She kept playing the visit over in her head, Finley's dramatic entrance, Victor's polite stiffness, the quiet look he gave the peeling wallpaper and duct-taped furniture. Finley had fallen asleep grinning, still chewing on a leftover dumpling. She'd stood in the doorway of his room for a long time after, arms crossed, wondering what exactly had just happened and whether it was over. It wasn't. The knock came early, too early for anything good. She opened the door in her robe, expecting a neighbor asking about the broken laundry machine or maybe the super finally coming to fix the leaky pipe. Instead, there stood Victor Crane, holding a paper bag and a cardboard tray with 2 coffees, looking like someone trying to impersonate normal. "I brought bagels," he said. She stared. "You brought what?" "I wasn't sure what kind you liked, so there are 5. He hesitated. "Also cream cheese, and something that might be salmon." Finley, still in pajamas, ran to the door and skidded to a stop behind her. "You came back! I told you he'd come back." Victor handed the bag over, as if that explained everything. "I was in the area." "You live on the other side of the city," Isabel said. "I was still in the area." Finley grabbed the bag and disappeared into the kitchen, already yelling about onion bagels and victory. Isabel stepped outside and pulled the door half-closed behind her. "You can't just show up," she said. "He's a kid. He gets attached." "I'm not here for a dramatic reunion," Victor said. "I have a job offer." She folded her arms. "For him? For you?" She waited. "There's an opening at Crane Link for a temporary assistant," he said. 3-month contract. Pays decently. Comes with health benefits. You're overqualified, honestly. But it's yours if you want it. She gave him a look he couldn't quite read. "Why are you doing this?" "Because your son walked across half the city to return something he could have stolen, and you're raising him like that. I could use someone like you around." She didn't answer right away. Behind them, Finley was singing loudly about bagels and salmon. Victor added, "He also asked if he could visit the office sometime. I think he meant it. He's 10. He's 10 and smarter than half my board." She glanced back at the apartment, then at him. "One condition." "Go on. You don't make him promises you won't keep. If you're going to disappear in a week, say so now." He nodded. "Fair enough." She stepped back inside without saying yes, but she didn't close the door either. By Monday, she was in the Crane Link lobby, wearing her best blouse and borrowed flats, Finley skipping next to her like it was a field trip. The receptionist recognized him instantly. "Hey, it's the wallet kid," she said. "Hi, Diamond Lady," Finley replied. "I'm here to supervise." He wasn't kidding. Victor had arranged for Isabel's onboarding to start that day, and while she filled out forms and met HR reps, Finley made himself a regular at the front desk. He quizzed employees as they came in. "What do you actually do here?" and offered loud reviews of their outfits. "You wear a tie to click a mouse," he said to one analyst. "That's like dressing up to take out the trash." By lunchtime, someone had given him a Crane Link visitor badge with the title, Junior Executive, Department of SAS. He wore it like a medal. Victor had a meeting that ran late, but he stopped by the break room when he could. Found Finley showing 2 interns how to build a domino track out of sugar packets. "You're taking over the office," Victor said. Finley shrugged. "They needed me." Victor looked over at Isabel, sitting in the corner with a laptop and a clipboard, eyes narrowed in focus. He hadn't been wrong. She had a sharpness about her that cut through the fluff. No small talk, no faking interest, just quiet competence. She had organized 3 file systems by noon and rewritten part of a meeting agenda without being asked. Victor's assistant leaned over. "She's good. She's very good. She's also not impressed by anything." "I know." Back upstairs, the board had questions. One executive, a man with permanent squint lines and a voice like stale coffee, pulled Victor aside. "This thing with the kid and his mom," he said. "Is it a project or a phase?" Victor didn't blink. "It's a decision. Just don't make it a headline." But the change was already starting. Victor began spending more time in the open spaces, less time sealed in his office. He let Finley sit in on a product demo and took his bizarre questions seriously. What happens if the satellite falls on a cow? He invited Isabel to lunch meetings where she took notes, then later corrected a financial model someone else had botched. She never said much, but when she did, people listened. At home, things shifted too. Finley stopped complaining about homework. Started trying out weird snack combinations, pretending he was doing Office training. He made Isabel laugh more, even when she was exhausted. There was one evening when Victor brought over groceries, and Finley made a full dinner with him, sort of. The rice was undercooked and the chicken weirdly spicy, but they ate it anyway. Victor told him it was gourmet, and Finley beamed like he'd won a prize. Some nights, Victor stayed longer. Not always inside, sometimes just parked downstairs, answering emails in his car until the lights in their window turned off. Once, Isabel caught him there and tapped on his window. "You doing surveillance now?" "Just thinking." "About what?" He didn't answer. Finley didn't ask questions about it. He just let it be what it was. Some adults showed up when you didn't expect them to. That was rare enough. He didn't need to mess with it. But even Finley knew something was changing. He saw the way Victor paused when Isabel talked, or how he leaned in when Finley made some dumb joke. Not in a romantic way. Just different. Like the space between them was starting to mean something. One afternoon, Finley was playing with a new toy Victor had brought, an old deconstructed circuit board he called a tech puzzle. He was sprawled across the floor, muttering to himself about resistors, when he suddenly looked up. "Hey," he said. "You ever think about being someone's dad?" Victor, who had been half asleep on the couch, sat up. "What?" "You'd be a weird one," Finley said. "But not the worst." Victor didn't answer. Finley nodded like that was enough. "Cool. I'll put in a good word for you." Victor stood to go not long after, said goodbye at the door. Finley saluted. Isabel handed him a plastic container with leftovers. He took it without looking at her. "Thanks. You know you don't have to keep doing all this," she said. He paused. "I know." She didn't say anything else, just shut the door gently behind him. Downstairs, he looked up at the window. Finley was already waving. Victor waved back, then stood there a while longer before finally getting in his car and driving off, the leftover chicken still warm in his hands. Victor had never intended to become a fixture in their lives, but by the third week, it had become routine. Isabel now worked 4 days a week at Crane Link and filled in remotely on the 5th. Finley had unofficially taken over an empty desk in the design lab and made it his mission to judge snack choices and invent job titles for people he found boring. Victor found himself checking in more than he used to, first out of obligation, then curiosity, and eventually something that felt a lot like want. Finley left notes on Victor's desk. Dumb doodles of him fighting robots or little reviews of office coffee. Tastes like burned hope. And once, just a drawing of the three of them in front of a spaceship-shaped house with the caption, "Crane Team, Space Division." Victor pinned that one under his monitor without thinking about it. Isabel noticed, said nothing. One Friday, Victor called them both with a proposal. "Clear your Sunday," he said. "I want to take you somewhere." Isabel hesitated. "Why?" He didn't give a real answer, only said it was a surprise. Finley was already packing a backpack. Sunday morning, a black limo waited outside their apartment. Finley burst through the front door and stopped in his tracks. "We robbing a bank?" he asked. Victor opened the door and gestured them in. "Not today!" The inside of the limo made Finley sit down carefully, like the leather might charge him rent. "Is this real? Like, do rich people actually ride in these, or is it just from movies and prom disasters?" Victor passed back a bottle of orange juice. "You're making this very hard to enjoy." "That's my brand." Isabel had worn her nicest blouse again, hair pulled back tight, her posture a little too straight. She said she was fine with the plan, but she kept glancing around like someone was going to tell her they didn't belong. Victor noticed but didn't comment. He just said, "We're starting with escalators." Finley blinked. What? "Escalators. I've seen them on TV. Are they dangerous?" Victor shrugged. "Depends how coordinated you are." They started at a shopping mall downtown. Not for shopping, just for the experience. Finley stood at the base of the escalator like he was about to fight it. He tested the moving steps with one sneaker, then yelped when it pulled him upward. Victor followed, and Finley shouted back down to Isabel. "Mom! You're missing the moving stairs! They're stealing me!" She sighed and got on. Halfway up, Finley bent his knees and pretended to surf. "This is exactly how billionaires travel. I knew it." People stared. A few laughed. Isabel flushed and gave Victor a look that landed somewhere between apology and amusement. They rode it 5 more times before Victor steered them toward the next stop, a sushi place that looked like it had its own dress code. Finley was skeptical. "So, we're eating raw fish. On purpose?" Victor nodded. "Do they at least microwave it first?" "No." Finley picked up a piece with his fingers. "I respect that. Bold move, fish." He tried one, gagged dramatically, then declared it his new favorite food and ate 4 more. Isabel sipped green tea like she'd done it before. Victor noticed how she kept her elbows in, how she barely touched the miso soup, how her fingers hesitated around the chopsticks. He pushed his plate closer and said quietly, "No pressure." She looked at him. "You think I'm uncomfortable?" "I think you're used to shrinking to fit rooms that weren't made for you." She said nothing, but she didn't push the plate away. After lunch, they wandered through a fancy bookstore where the carpets were so soft Finley took off his shoes and got scolded by a clerk. He ran his hands across glossy covers, made up titles for books he couldn't pronounce. "This one's about an alien lawyer who falls in love with a blender. Don't ask how I know." He got a comic book and a thick novel that Victor insisted he'd love. Isabel chose nothing, though she lingered in the poetry section longer than she meant to. Victor quietly bought the book she kept picking up and tucked it into her bag when she wasn't looking. They ended the day at Victor's penthouse, mostly because Finley begged to see it. The elevator opened into the living room. Finley's jaw dropped. Is this your house or an Apple store?" Victor poured him a glass of juice and handed him the remote. Finley explored like it was a museum, narrating into an invisible microphone. "And here we have the rare billionaire habitat. Note the absence of snacks. Very suspicious." He eventually collapsed on the couch and flipped through his new comic, then set it aside and leaned against Victor without thinking. Within minutes, he was asleep, breathing slow and even. Isabel watched from the kitchen, arms folded. She didn't move to wake him. Victor sat still, as if any shift might ruin something delicate. He didn't look up when she spoke. "You know this doesn't mean anything permanent," she said. "You don't get to give him days like this and then disappear. I'm not planning to. But you don't plan much of this, do you?" He ran a hand gently across Finley's back. "No. I don't." Isabel came over, lowered herself into the chair opposite the couch. She didn't speak for a while. The room hummed with soft background music and the dull hush of city noise outside the window. "He hasn't had a day like this," she said. "Ever." Victor looked at her now. "That's not his fault. It's not yours either. But if you're not careful, he's going to start thinking you're part of his life. Really part of it." He didn't answer. She leaned forward. "He's a lot. He's loud and messy and smarter than he should be. And I've been the only one who's stayed. I'm not trying to take your place. No. But he might give you one. Whether you want it or not." Victor looked down at the boy asleep against his side, the wild mop of hair, the comic book sliding to the floor. He spoke quietly. "I don't know what this is. But I feel like when I'm around him, and you, I'm not. I don't know. Not on autopilot." Isabel softened. "That's not nothing." When they left, Victor carried Finley to the car. The boy stirred just enough to mutter, "Do billionaires always smell like bookstores and shrimp?" Victor chuckled. "Only on weekends." Finley sat up halfway as they pulled up outside their building. "You can be our rich uncle. Or weird stepdad. We're flexible." Victor looked at Isabel, waiting for a reaction. She didn't offer one. Finley dragged himself upstairs, yawning. Isabel turned back before going in. Thanks for today. He nodded. There's more where that came from. She hesitated. That's what I'm afraid of. Then the door closed, and Victor stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, wondering why everything that had once felt so carefully built now felt like scaffolding waiting to be replaced by something real. Finley spent the week after their day of firsts, retelling the highlights to anyone who would listen. The escalator surfing had become a legend at Crane Link, exaggerated with every telling. He claimed he nearly fell, got caught by a ninja, then rode the handrail like a dragon's spine. Victor didn't bother correcting him. The building's receptionist had started keeping a pack of gum and a juice box at her desk just for Finley. Even the stern IT guy who didn't talk to anyone now gave him a high five in the mornings. Finley made himself comfortable in a place where no one had expected a 10-year-old to fit. Victor kept showing up. Never too often, never with fanfare. Sometimes with lunch, sometimes with questions for Isabel about scheduling or staff reorganization, which she answered without looking up from her screen. She kept her voice professional, but there was less bite in it than before. Finley picked up on the shift and started asking less if Victor would come around again, and more when. It all started feeling normal, or at least their version of it. The Thursday it happened, Victor stopped by with a box of old prototype drones he thought Finley might like to take apart. He found the boy in the conference room, drawing comics of a robot army that turned vegetables into candy. Isabel was typing nearby, surrounded by color-coded sticky notes. You're just in time, Finley said, eyes still on his paper. My robot needs a legal advisor. You've got the face for it. Victor smirked and dropped the box onto the table. Isabel glanced over once and went back to work. A few minutes later, while Finley picked through wires and circuit boards, Victor casually asked, You doing anything this weekend? Finley shrugged. Probably laundry. Why? I was thinking we could go see that robotics exhibit. Maybe grab dinner after. Finley didn't look up. Sure. Yeah. That's fine. Victor waited. Something was off. You sound underwhelmed. Just another Saturday, Finley said. Not like it matters. Victor sat down. What's going on? Finley hesitated, then finally said, It's my birthday. Victor blinked. It's your birthday and you weren't going to say anything? Finley shrugged again. We don't really do birthdays. Mom works. Cake's expensive. We had a candle and a muffin once. That was a solid year. Victor looked over at Isabel. She didn't react, but her typing had stopped. She finally said, without looking up, He doesn't make a big deal out of it. Never has. Victor nodded slowly. Okay. He didn't say anything else. He just left the room not long after, his mind already spinning. The next morning, Finley woke up to a note on the kitchen table that read, Wear sneakers. Don't eat breakfast. Trust me. V. Isabel rolled her eyes when she read it, but didn't object. By 10, a black SUV waited downstairs, and Finley hopped in like it was the most natural thing in the world. Victor didn't tell them where they were going. Just smiled and kept the window cracked, the breeze ruffling Finley's hair as they drove out of the city. After 30 minutes, Finley started making guesses. Zoo? Nope. Space Center? Closer than you think. Victor pulled up to a gate with a private security guard, who waved them through without a word. Beyond it, the road opened onto a small amusement park. The kind with old-fashioned rides and neon signs that blinked like they were always half asleep. Except today, it was empty. Are we trespassing? Finley whispered, eyes wide. Victor opened the door. Nope. It's yours. Just for today. Finley got out slowly, turning in a full circle. Wait. This whole place? Victor nodded. Every ride. Every booth. All of it. Isabel stepped out behind them, stunned. You rented an amusement park? He's 10. He deserves something memorable. Finley made a noise that didn't have words in it, then sprinted toward the carousel. For the next hour, he ran from ride to ride, arms flailing, hair flying. He made the operator take him on the Ferris wheel 5 times in a row. He made Victor ride the tilt-a-whirl and laughed so hard he nearly fell over when Victor stumbled off green-faced. Isabel eventually gave in and joined them on the bumper cars. Finley smashed into both of them, cackling like a mad scientist. Lunch was pizza, fries, cotton candy, and soda Victor had personally had stocked in a makeshift booth labeled Finley's Fuel Station. They sat at a table under a canopy while Finley bounced in his seat, feet barely touching the ground. Isabel watched him, her face unreadable. Victor leaned toward her. "Too much?" She didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, "I don't know how to say thank you without sounding like I'm letting you buy something you shouldn't be able to buy. I'm not trying to buy anything." She finally looked at him. "Then what is this?" He gestured toward Finley, now pretending to command the roller coaster operator like a spaceship captain. "Gratitude. Joy. Take your pick." She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped a little. "He's going to remember this forever," Victor said. "Good. So will I." Later that afternoon, they brought Finley inside one of the park's event halls where a table sat in the middle, covered in a silver cloth. On it was a cake shaped like a spaceship, with sparklers for boosters and frosting stars across the top. Finley stopped short. "You're kidding." Victor shook his head. "It's edible. I checked." Finley stared at it. Then at Victor. Then at his mom. "Okay," he said. "Now this is officially the best day of my life." After cake, they sat on a bench near the park's exit, the sun dipping behind the trees, the air just cool enough to keep Finley from melting in his jacket. He leaned heavily against Victor, too full to move. "You know you didn't have to do all this," Finley said. "I'd have settled for just a pizza. Or like half the pizza." Victor rested an arm along the bench back. "You deserve more than half a pizza," Finley yawned. "Don't die before next year, okay?" Victor chuckled. "I'll try not to." "No, seriously. You've got to make it to the next one. It's the rules now." Victor paused, then extended his pinky. "A pact?" Finley linked his own. "Every year. No matter what." Victor didn't say anything. Just held it there for a few seconds, then let go. When they dropped them off that night, Finley fell asleep in the back seat before they even reached their street. Isabel helped him out of the car, half carrying him up the steps. Victor waited by the curb until she returned. "You didn't have to do the cake," she said. "I know." She nodded. "He'll expect it now." "I'll expect it too." She hesitated, then asked, "Are you planning to stay in his life?" "I already am." She didn't push back. Just said, "Then don't disappear." Victor watched her go, waited until their apartment light flicked on. Then he got back in the SUV, the weight of Finley's head still somehow present against his shoulder. He didn't know what kind of life he just stepped into, but for the first time in years, he didn't want to step out. 6 months after the birthday pact, life had quietly reshaped itself. Not in a dramatic, sweeping way, but gradually, like furniture being moved a little at a time until suddenly the whole room felt different. Victor had become a regular part of their days without ever declaring it. There was no official title, no announcement, no line drawn in the sand. Just a steady presence. He showed up for breakfast twice a week, usually bringing bagels or croissants or some experimental pastry from a place Finley called Fancy Bread Prison. He joined school pickups when Isabel worked late, stayed for dinner most Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays too. Once, during a particularly chaotic Tuesday, he fixed their broken heater with instructions from YouTube and a wrench borrowed from the building super. Finley had made a chart once, in colored pencil, mapping out Victor's unofficial roles. Backup parent, ride provider, lunch hero. And at the top, robot co-builder. They were knee-deep in a new project, Sir Beeps-a-lot, a squat, wobbling robot with googly eyes and a tendency to move in unpredictable directions. The robotics contest at Finley's school was 2 weeks away, and every Saturday the living room turned into a tech lab, with Isabel politely avoiding stepping on circuit boards and Victor losing arguments with the instruction manual. Finley thrived. He had more energy, more focus. He started sleeping through the night again, stopped flinching when the downstairs neighbors yelled, got into the habit of leaving sticky notes around the apartment with bad puns and science jokes. Isabel found one on her bathroom mirror that read, "You're positively electric. Love, your favorite proton." She didn't admit it, but she folded it into her wallet and kept it there. Victor, for his part, adapted. He started carrying a second phone just for Finley's texts. He learned to cook 3 meals Finley liked and 2 he tolerated. He fixed the peeling drawer in the kitchen without being asked. He danced with Isabel one night when an old song came on while they were cleaning up, laughing when she almost dropped a plate. She danced back slowly, like muscle memory. Everything was fine. Better than fine. Then came the dinner. It wasn't a big event. Just spaghetti, a salad Isabel half prepared before getting distracted, and a slightly burnt garlic bread Finley called crispy flavor innovation. Victor had come over late from a work meeting and still wore his blazer, sleeves rolled up. They ate at the little table by the window, the one with mismatched chairs and a water stain they always forgot to cover. Finley, in rare form, decided to make a toast. He stood on his chair with a juice box in hand and tapped the plastic like a wine glass. "To Victor," he said, "who is like the dad I didn't order but came in the mail anyway." Victor laughed. Isabel groaned into her napkin. Finley kept going. "And who doesn't make us feel weird for being ourselves, even when I talk about robot chickens for 45 minutes or Mom starts humming at the sink like she's in a musical?" Isabel threw a crouton at him. Finley ducked and added, "Also, he didn't run away after meeting us, which honestly? Bold move." Victor raised his glass of water. "To robot chickens." They clinked glasses. Finley beamed. The moment passed, but something stuck in the air after that. Victor felt it. Isabel did too. She cleared plates without saying much, and Finley disappeared into his room, claiming he needed to tighten Sir Beeps's emotional screws. Victor helped dry dishes, standing a little too close as Isabel handed over a pan. She glanced up once, then away again. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired," she said. "You didn't look tired when we were dancing last week. That was music. This is reality." He set the towel down, trying to read something in her posture. "You know, I've thought about saying something for a while now." She paused. "Saying what?" But he didn't answer right away. Just leaned against the counter, looking at nothing in particular. "I've gotten used to this," he said. "Being here. With you. With him. It's not something I plan, but now I can't picture not being part of it." Her voice was softer when she replied. "Then don't go." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "But I've also been wondering if this is enough. For you. For Finley." She didn't respond. Not with words. Just started folding the dish towel, slowly, like it might tell her what to say. Victor didn't push it. He thought about saying more. About rings. About promises. About how he'd imagined what it might be like to wake up in that apartment for real, not just on the weekends. But he didn't. Not yet. Something about the quiet in the room told him to wait. That night, Finley climbed into his mom's bed after a thunderstorm rolled through. He nestled under the blanket like he'd done when he was smaller, before he started pretending to be brave all the time. "Is Victor ever gonna marry you?" he asked. Isabel blinked in the dark. "What?" "I think he wants to," Finley whispered. "He acts weird when you're around. Like how I act when I'm hiding candy I don't want to share." Isabel laughed once softly. "He does not. Okay, maybe not candy. But he likes you. You like him too, right?" She hesitated. "I don't know what it is yet." "Well, if he does marry you," Finley said, "I'm not calling him Dad. That's too much paperwork. But maybe like Victor 2.0. She kissed the top of his head. Go to sleep, Finley mumbled. Just saying. He's already kinda family. Isabel didn't say anything to that, but she didn't disagree either. The next morning, Victor showed up early with cinnamon rolls and a blueprint for a new upgrade to Sir Beeps-a-Lot. Isabel let him in without her usual half-suspicious squint. Finley bounded out of his room in socks and immediately started listing new features they needed: blinking lights, voice commands, possibly a flamethrower. Victor promised to research safe alternatives. That afternoon, Isabel watched them working side by side, heads bent over tiny wires and buttons, and something settled quietly inside her. Whatever this was, it wasn't a phase. It wasn't temporary. Victor looked up once and caught her watching. He smiled, but didn't say anything. Just handed Finley a screwdriver and leaned in closer. The weeks rolled on with the kind of rhythm Victor hadn't realized he'd been craving. The sound of Finley thundering through the apartment with socks half off, the clatter of pans when Isabel tried a new recipe and Finley rated it like a food critic, the late-night talks that started with something practical and ended somewhere tender. Victor had stopped seeing their lives as something he was orbiting. He was in it now, completely. He kept his suits at their place, his toothbrush in the bathroom, his laptop on the kitchen counter between Finley's science books and Isabel's receipts. And no one asked questions about it anymore. Sir Beeps-a-Lot won second place at the robotics contest, mostly because he short-circuited mid-demonstration and began spinning in circles while repeating, "Friend mode activated," in a high-pitched voice. Finley didn't care. He held up the medal like it was Olympic gold, declared himself the robot whisperer, and asked if they could launch a startup. Victor told him to finish 5th grade first. Isabel had started to smile more. It wasn't constant, and it wasn't always visible, but there was a quiet ease in her now. A looseness in the way she folded laundry or picked up Finley's backpack or said Victor's name like it wasn't a decision she had to make each time. Victor noticed. And eventually, he stopped waiting for the perfect moment. It happened on a Tuesday night, not long after Finley had gone to bed, still high off a successful spaghetti experiment. They'd eaten on the couch, watched an old movie Finley hated and talked through, and now the apartment had gone still except for the hum of the fridge. Isabel stood at the sink, rinsing a pan, her hair up in a messy knot, wearing one of Victor's old shirts because it was soft, and the sleeves fell over her hands. Victor leaned against the doorframe, watching her. He hadn't planned to do anything. He didn't even have a ring. She glanced at him. "You okay?" "I keep thinking there's something I'm supposed to say," he replied. "Something big. You've been quiet for 10 minutes. That's already big." He came closer slowly, until he was behind her. She turned, wiping her hands on a towel, waiting. Victor hesitated, then said, "I didn't grow up with this. Not the warmth. Not the noise. Definitely not the spaghetti explosions." She smiled a little. "But I've had it now," he said. "And I can't go back. I don't want to." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, one he'd bought weeks ago and kept forgetting how to present. He opened it with a thumb, no flourish. Just a plain silver band. "I want to marry you. I want to be your family. For real. Not just on weekends or in Finley's role-play games. I want all of it. And I know it's messy. But I'm messy. So maybe that fits." Isabel stared at the ring, then at him. Her hands were still damp. She didn't move for a long time. When she finally did, it wasn't with a speech. She just took the ring, slipped it on, and whispered, "Yes," like it had been sitting on the edge of her mouth for months. Victor kissed her, and her hands were still a little soapy, and the ring was crooked, and nothing was perfect, so of course it was. Finley found out the next morning when he spotted the ring during breakfast. He nearly choked on his cereal. "Wait. Are we doing this? Are you gonna be like legally family?" Victor nodded. "That's the plan." Finley dropped his spoon, stood on the chair, and shouted, "I call best man. You can't just call best man. Isabel said, smiling. I'm the only man short enough to stand next to him and not mess up the photos, Finley said. It's logic. Victor raised his hands. He has a point. They started planning something small. A backyard ceremony at a friend's house, some fairy lights, folding chairs, nothing fancy. Isabel didn't want a big crowd. Victor didn't want press. Finley wanted cake shaped like a spaceship again, so that was the one non-negotiable. He also insisted on writing a speech. The practice version was delivered in their living room one evening while Isabel tried not to laugh too loudly. My mom's marrying a rich dude, Finley began. So I guess dreams do come true. Victor leaned back on the couch, amused. Finley continued. When I first met Victor, I thought he was probably a robot or a vampire. He was pale, serious, and didn't laugh at any of my jokes. But then he fed me sushi and gave me a job title, so I decided to keep him. Isabel covered her mouth. He never tried to be perfect. He just showed up. Again and again. Even when Mom was mad at him. Even when I was annoying. Which, let's be honest, is often. Victor raised a hand. Very often. Finley nodded. So if this is what family feels like, I think we're doing okay. There were more jokes. Something about Victor being old and Finley needing a raise in his imaginary salary. And then he bowed and declared the speech ready. A week before the wedding, Victor took Finley shopping for suits. Isabel had already picked something simple. Victor planned to wear something he already owned. But Finley wanted a custom vibe, so they made an afternoon of it. They ended up at a small boutique run by a retired tailor who offered superhero socks as a bonus. Finley picked a dark gray suit with green stitching and asked for a matching cape. Victor vetoed the cape but bought the socks. They walked out carrying their garment bags like secret agents. That night, while Isabel worked late, Victor and Finley ordered burgers and watched old cartoons. At one point, Finley fell asleep on the floor next to the couch, his head resting against the dogged instruction manual for Sir Beeps. Victor left him there, unable to bring himself to move him. He just sat, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, until Isabel came home and gently picked him up, whispering, He's getting heavy. Victor replied. You're stronger than you think. The day before the wedding, they spent the afternoon at the park. Just the three of them. No plans, no tasks. Finley brought a soccer ball and convinced Victor to play goalie. Victor was terrible. Finley scored every time and screamed in victory, falling into the grass, breathless. Victor watched him run back and forth across the field, the late afternoon light catching in his hair, his laughter bouncing between trees. He pulled out his phone and snapped a photo, Finley mid-step, grinning, one sock falling down. It wasn't perfect, but it was the kind of picture you printed and framed. He texted it to Isabel, who replied a minute later with a heart emoji and nothing else. Later that evening, back at their apartment, Finley tucked himself into bed early, mumbling something about needing emotional stamina for tomorrow. Victor stood in the hallway for a while, staring at the photo again. It was his favorite picture now. He didn't know why, exactly. Maybe because it looked like joy. Maybe because it felt like home. He didn't know it would be the last picture anyone would take of him. The night before the wedding, the apartment had been loud in all the right ways. Finley had run back and forth between the kitchen and his bedroom, practicing his speech again even though no one had asked him to, repeating punchlines until Victor begged for mercy. Isabel had stayed up late steaming her dress, humming along to the music Finley had queued up. They ate grilled cheese on paper towels because no one wanted to wash dishes the night before the big day. When it got late, Finley stood in the doorway of the living room in his pajamas, looking unusually serious. Hey, he said. Don't forget the socks tomorrow. Victor grinned. Never. Finley nodded once, satisfied. Good. We'll be the fanciest weirdos there. He hugged them both, then padded off to bed. Victor checked in on him a half hour later and found him already asleep, curled up with Sir Beeps a lot next to him like a stuffed animal. He left the door cracked open, just like Finley liked it. In the morning, the alarm went off at 7 o'clock. Isabel got up first. She brewed coffee, still in her robe, trying to keep everything calm and steady. Today was the day, and it felt light and full, even in her bones. She started laying out clothes, humming again. Victor stepped out of the bedroom rubbing his eyes, smiled when he saw the little pile Finley had left in the hallway: socks, tie, cufflinks shaped like tiny spaceships. But the silence was too deep. Too still. "Is he up?" Isabel asked. "Not yet," Victor said. She went to knock on the door. Waited. Knocked again. "Finley?" she called. "Hey, kiddo. You've got a big day." No answer. She opened the door. Victor heard the sound she made. A half-breath. A click in the throat. Nothing dramatic. Just the noise of something leaving the body. He ran. Finley was still in bed. Eyes closed. Arms at his sides like he'd drifted off and never noticed. Isabel reached for him and found him cold. There was no warning. No gasp. No wheeze. No twitch. Just stillness. Victor called 911 with shaking hands. The operator asked questions he couldn't answer. Isabel kept whispering Finley's name like if she said it right, he'd blink awake. She pressed her hand to his chest again and again, even though she knew. She knew. The paramedics arrived. Worked on him for 15 minutes. Tried everything. Said the words no one ever wants to hear in a voice too calm, too practiced. Sudden cardiac arrest, probably while he was sleeping. Rare. No known cause. Happens sometimes. No one's fault. Sometimes the heart just stops. Victor didn't scream at them. Isabel did. The rest of the day was a blur of uniforms and questions and people they didn't know moving through the apartment like it was a crime scene. Isabel collapsed in the hallway. Victor caught her. Either of them spoke for a long time. The wedding dress still hung on the door. The cake was already on its way. Someone from the venue texted to ask where the couple was. Victor didn't answer. They didn't leave the apartment that day. Or the next. The light changed, the weather shifted, the phone rang and rang. No one picked up. The robot still sat in the corner of Finley's room, slumped over, one googly eye half peeled. Sir Beeps-a-lot deactivated. Isabel didn't cry in front of Victor after the first day. She folded into herself, moving only when necessary. She stopped eating. Stopped answering emails. She wouldn't let him hold her. Wouldn't let him stay in the same room for long. She blamed the silence. She said it was too loud with him there. Victor didn't leave, not fully. He slept on the couch most nights, stared at the ceiling until sunrise. Sometimes he made her tea and left it by the door. Most days it went untouched. He tried to call people, therapists, counselors, anyone. They all said the same things: give her time, don't push. But he couldn't seem to pull himself together either. He didn't go to work. He didn't shave. He stopped answering messages from the board. The ring sat on the kitchen table for a week before Isabel picked it up and put it in a drawer. A month passed. The apartment remained frozen in the moment it all stopped. Finley's schoolbooks still stacked on the coffee table. His shoes still by the door. Victor couldn't bring himself to move anything. The smell of that last dinner, grilled cheese and chocolate milk, lingered like it had seeped into the walls. One night, just past midnight, Victor wandered into Finley's room. He hadn't been in there since the funeral. The blankets were still half-tangled. A comic book sat face down on the floor. He picked it up, turned it over, held it like it was glass. He sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the robot. Sir Beeps-a-lot. Finley had worked so hard to give it personality. To make it something more than wires and plastic. Victor reached out, pressed the small blue button Finley had insisted was essential. The one he'd said wasn't finished yet. The robot blinked once. Then twice. Then beeped. Victor flinched. And then, in Finley's voice, recorded soft, a little scratchy from the cheap microphone, came the message. Don't be sad. I love you both. Now get back to laughing. Victor froze. He played it again. And again. Same message every time. The tears came slow, then fast. He curled over the robot, held it to his chest, let it beat between sobs. The sound woke Isabel. She came to the doorway, leaned against the frame, saw him folded on the floor like something broken. He didn't look up, just kept holding the robot. She walked in quietly, sat down next to him, said nothing. The robot beeped again. She reached out and pressed the button herself. Listened. Let it wash over her. And something cracked. Her shoulders shook. Not a full cry. Not yet. But it was a beginning. They stayed like that for a long time, either one speaking. Just breathing, holding what Finley had left behind. In the morning, Isabel made tea. She drank it. Victor found a note in the kitchen. A line from Finley. If you're reading this, I probably said something weird before I left. Sorry. Unless it was funny. Then you're welcome. Victor smiled. Just a little. Later that day, they cleared the coffee table. Put away the cake box. Moved the shoes. Bit by bit they made space. Not to erase. Just to live. And in the corner of the living room, Sir Beeps-a-lot beeped once more, waiting. The apartment didn't fill back up with laughter all at once. The quiet stayed for a while, settled into corners and under furniture like dust. But over time, the weight shifted. Grief didn't disappear, it didn't even soften, not really, but it got absorbed into the rhythm of things. Isabel started cooking again. Victor started reading out loud from Finley's old books just to hear a voice in the space. Neither of them touched the robot for a few weeks, but eventually they moved it into the living room, beside the bookshelf. Sir Beeps-a-lot became more than just a machine. He became a reminder that something beautiful had existed there, something worth carrying forward. When spring returned, so did movement. The park where Finley had played that last afternoon reopened its flower gardens. The weather got warm enough for picnics, and kids running barefoot on the grass. Isabel and Victor walked there sometimes, not talking much, just moving together like they didn't need to explain anything. A year passed. The exact date came and went. Isabel didn't want a memorial. Neither did Victor. What they did instead was invite 12 people to the park. No invitations, no ceremony, just a gathering. They stood barefoot under the same tree Finley had kicked a soccer ball against, the leaves trembling in the wind like they remembered him too. There was no music, no aisle, no chairs. Just a small table with a framed photo, Finley holding a slice of cake the size of his head, face lit up mid-laugh. Isabel wore a simple dress that stopped at her knees. Victor rolled up the sleeves of his shirt. They held hands and said quiet vows that no one else could hear, and it was enough. Finley's robot sat beside the cake, his name stitched onto a patch on its side in blue thread. At the end of the vows, Victor pressed the little blue button. Sir Beeps-a-lot chirped, then said in Finley's voice, "Don't be sad. I love you both. Now get back to laughing." Someone cried. Someone laughed. Isabel closed her eyes. Later that week, they opened their door for the first time in months, not to guests, but to neighborhood kids. Finley's room had been gently transformed. The bed was gone, replaced by beanbags and bookshelves. Victor had donated the tech. Isabel had sorted the stories. Kids came after school now, sat on the floor and read or tinkered with old gadgets. It wasn't a library, and it wasn't quite a classroom. But it had Finley's name on the door, and it always smelled faintly of cinnamon from the cookies Isabel baked on Thursdays. Victor poured his energy into the project with a kind of devotion that didn't look like work. He launched the Finley Crane Initiative, a scholarship fund and STEM program for underserved schools. He visited classrooms and brought kits for building robots. He stood in front of crowds of kids and told them stories about a boy who once surfed an escalator and made everyone laugh, even when he didn't mean to. At the end of every speech, he always said the same thing. "There once was a boy who gave me back my wallet and stole my heart." Isabel spoke too, when she was ready. She didn't enjoy crowds, but when she talked, people listened. Her voice was calm and measured, and her words stayed in the air after she stopped speaking. She talked about raising a child with imagination bigger than their apartment. She talked about surviving loss without forgetting joy. And when she talked about Finley, her hands stayed still, like even grief deserved to be held gently. They started laughing again, not all the time, but in real, unexpected bursts. When Victor forgot how to boil rice. When Isabel found one of Finley's old jokes scribbled on the back of a receipt. When the robot randomly beeped in the middle of the night, and scared them both so badly they nearly called the fire department. They laughed then, and they didn't stop for a long time. They traveled once that summer, just for a weekend. A small coastal town with quiet beaches and soft sand. Victor brought a book he never opened. Isabel brought a scarf Finley had once used as a superhero cape. They sat by the water, and neither of them tried to pretend they were healed. But they were together, and that was something. Back in the city, the reading room stayed open, even when it rained. Kids came in soaked and dripping, and Isabel handed them towels and cookies. One day, a boy they'd never seen before came in alone. Maybe 8, maybe 9. Small frame, big coat, nervous eyes. He didn't speak. Just hovered near the door. Victor welcomed him in, showed him the shelves, let him pick a book. The boy didn't read, just held the book in his lap. Before leaving, he pointed to the robot in the corner. It still sat quietly, now a little dusty, its paint chipped around the edges. "Can I touch it?" he asked. Victor nodded. "Go ahead." The boy approached slowly, like it might wake up and scold him. He pressed the button. The robot beeped once. Then again. Then, "Hey, you look like someone who needs a friend." The boy's mouth twitched. Not a smile exactly, but something close. He sat down next to the robot and didn't move for a while. Victor watched from the hallway, hands in his pockets, not saying anything. Later that night, Isabel found him standing in the kitchen, holding a mug that had gone cold. "He liked the robot," he said. "He'll be back." They stood in silence a moment, then she reached for his hand. Her fingers curled around his without hesitation. Victor looked around the apartment. The walls had been repainted. The furniture rearranged. But the feeling remained, tucked into every corner, the memory of laughter, the presence of someone small and loud and full of life. Not a ghost, not a shadow. Just the echo of love. They weren't the family they'd planned to be. But they were still a family. And somewhere in a city park, under a certain tree, a small robot sat in the grass. A child walking alone spotted it, picked it up curious. The paint was fading, and one eye was slightly loose, but the button still worked. The child pressed it. It beeped then said, "Hey, you look like someone who needs a friend." The child smiled. And for a moment, the world tilted gently toward joy again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps out the channel. And if you want more heartwarming and emotional stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this one. I'd love to hear your reactions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.